This is CBC Vancouver News.
I assumed that they were going to do an autopsy, but they didn't. They just did the toxicology report, and I didn't really get any information about that.
Why does BC not do more autopsies? Amid the brutal poison drug crisis, many families wonder why. Plus,
there have been numerous colleagues of mine, intentionally or unintentionally, who have said anti-Semitic things.
Former BC Cabinet Minister Selina Robinson resigns from the NDP caucus. She says she does not feel supported as a Jewish woman. And
violate your own zoning bylaws. I believe that's called illegal.
The tapes have not been modified.
That's bullshit, they have.
serious questions in Sayward. Amid severe municipal dysfunction, some in the tiny BC community wonder if it's time to give up their mayor and council. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. It's probably something you don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about, autopsies. But here in BC, if you die, chances are you will not get one. And as John Hernandez reports, that is leaving a lot of people with unanswered questions and families wondering why.
Tens of thousands of people die in BC each year, but since 1991, the number of those deaths that receive autopsies has gotten smaller and smaller. In fact, the province is lagging behind most other jurisdictions in Canada when it comes to its autopsy rate. So what's the impact? Well, it starts with families who have lost loved ones. We went to Port Coquitlam to meet with the father of a teen who died of a suspected overdose nearly 2 years ago, but she never received an autopsy.
Go lucky, carefree, bit of issues, little troublemaker as a teenage girl, but your typical teenage girl.
This park is where Greg Sayward would take his daughter Camila to play when she was a kid. But as she got older, it took on a different meaning.
This is where her and her friends would come down, and this is where they would usually get their drugs.
On August 20th, 2022, Sayward says his daughter came here and bought dilly, a street term for the prescription opioid hydromorphone. The next day, Camila was found dead in her bedroom.
My mom actually found her body at 8 o'clock in the morning. She was curled up in a fetal position. And then when I got there, the cops were there, and they would not allow me to see my daughter until she was in a body bag.
It took nearly a year and a half before the BC Coroner's Service released its findings. A toxicology report found cocaine, hydromorphone, and MDMA in the teen's blood. The coroner concluded she died of cardiac arrhythmia caused by cocaine and MDMA use, but no autopsy was ever performed. Sayward still wonders if dilly played a role in her death.
And I assumed that they were going to do an autopsy, but they didn't.
We ran Camila Sayward's toxicology and coroner's reports by a number of independent death investigators who all said the same thing. Without an autopsy, it's hard to say with any degree of certainty what killed her.
Certainly in the context of a 14-year-old girl, we need to be sure what the cause of death is. Not just a best guess. We need to be pretty darn certain.
Forensic pathologist Matthew Ord says investigators could be missing out on critical health information related to the teen's death.
To me, the cause of Camila Sayward's death is undetermined. It could be explained by drug toxicity, but there may be other factors at play that haven't been assessed by virtue of the lack of an autopsy.
Camila's case is far from unique. The vast majority of overdose deaths in BC don't receive autopsies, and forensic pathologists, the people qualified to perform them, say that's a big problem. BC's autopsy rate has steadily declined since the early 90s, dropping from 22% in 1991 to just 3.2% in 2022. That trails behind all provinces with more than 1 million residents other than Quebec.
The low autopsy rate it's a scandal. It means that we are unable to identify how and why it is our loved ones have died. As a society, we all need to know why people die. It's an important societal safeguard. We need death data to work out why people die so we can channel funding in the correct routes and so on. It acts as an early warning system for new disease processes such as COVID-19, or it can help identify new potent illicit drugs that come onto the market, and it can also pick up safety issues.
In a statement, the BC Coroner's Service said the main reason the autopsy rate is so low is because the number of unregulated drug deaths is much higher in BC than most other provinces. Instead, coroners will rely on information like toxicology, the scene, and the deceased's medical history. But that still doesn't account for how few autopsies are actually done here, especially compared to provinces like Alberta. In 2022, Alberta completed about 2,000 more autopsies than BC did, despite having far fewer total deaths. Dr. John Butt is the founder of Alberta's medical examiner system.
In a system like there is in British Columbia, it wants badly for medical direction.
A medical examiner system like in Alberta is run by doctors. Deaths are investigated by physicians. But that's not the case in BC, which uses a coroner's service. Coroners here don't have medical training, yet still make critical determinations on the cause of someone's death, including whether or not there should be an autopsy.
I would bet my bottom dollar that the issue here in British Columbia is to save money on autopsies. It's not the bottom line, but when you look at the way the system is organized, it defaults into that by the ineptitude or lack of education by the chief coroner in issues of medical cause.
For decades, the BC Coroner's Service has been run by lawyers, including former Chief Coroner Lisa Lapointe, who recently retired after 13 years. When asked if the province would consider her successor to be someone with a medical background, provincial leaders were non-committal.
I'm looking for someone, the best person for the job.
I'm sure that person will be looking at our practices here in the province to see whether there are areas for improvement or additional scrutiny, and that person will have my full support.
As for Sayward, he's come to realize that there are many just like him who want more clarity on the deaths of their loved ones, but will likely never get it.
It just makes me question, why don't we have it? Why aren't we really trying to find out the source of these deaths? Why don't we invest the money?
Answers that, in the end, might not change what happened to his daughter, but could still provide some much-needed closure. John Hernandez, CBC News, Port Coquitlam.
A bombshell in the BC legislature today. Former Finance Minister Selina Robinson has resigned from the NDP caucus to sit as an independent. Robinson says she felt unsupported as a Jewish woman in her party and claims there are anti-Semitic voices in the caucus.
There have been numerous colleagues of mine, intentionally or unintentionally, who have said anti-Semitic things. The Jewish community heard apologies from them. They were accepted, and things carried on. That hasn't been the case, certainly in my case, and that certainly has been very hurtful, and the Jewish community is pretty outraged by it.
In February, Robinson resigned as post-secondary education minister after she made comments about the Middle East during a panel of Jewish public officials. She referred to the region where Israel was settled as a, quote, crappy piece of land with nothing on it. She apologized but faced mounting criticism, including from the premier, and eventually stepped down. The NDP's House leader says he recognizes Robinson as hurting and respects her decision to leave, but he denies her claims of double standards or anti-Semitism within the caucus.
I would not agree with that. People understand that the Jewish community is hurting. The attacks from Hamas are traumatizing for people in our communities, within the Jewish community, and for the community broadly.
Robinson had already announced she was not going to run in this fall's provincial election. Premier David Eby, meanwhile, released a statement about Robinson's resignation. It reads in part, Selina made a mistake and she was doing the work to address the harm that was caused. I wish she had brought her concerns to me directly so we could have worked through them together. He adds, our government's work to bring people and communities together will continue. I will continue to condemn hate in all its forms, including the rise of anti-Semitism we've seen. Every municipality in BC has an elected mayor and council who oversees services for citizens. But there's one municipality that's had so many problems in recent years, some are wondering whether it ought to give up that responsibility. Justin McElroy visited the Vancouver Island community of Sayward to find it divided.
Sayward. It's like a lot of places in British Columbia. There's a post office where everyone has their own box, a local RCMP detachment with 3 cars, a school that finally got that new playground the kids wanted, a walk-in clinic and a paramedic, all of the essentials, and it's all right here on one block. 2.5 hours north of Nanaimo, Sayward faces the same challenges as a lot of remote towns. It was created out of the forest industry, but it produces a fraction of the jobs it once did. There's beauty everywhere you look and hopes for ecotourism, but also more pressing needs, like bringing back the grocery store or diversifying the housing stock for an aging community. And like 160 other municipalities in this province, residents decide what's best for their future by electing a mayor and council, and then gather around a table to debate how to move forward as a community. Or not.
You should step down from your positions of power because it's gone to your heads.
This is the first time we've had all of you here, and it's only because the cameras are on from the media. You haven't all been here for like 8 months together because you can't sit together respectfully.
This is ridiculous.
You know my name? No, sir. I think you do. When you violate your own zoning bylaws, I believe that's called illegal.
The tapes have not been modified.
That's bull. They have.
Excuse me.
No, they have been altered.
Your language, please.
We're looking for answers. This has been over a year.
This is unacceptable. You'll be asked to leave this meeting.
I've emailed you, you, and the village of Sayward. We're about to
In the last 5 years, Sayward has had 5 different mayors, more than any other municipality in British Columbia. In that same time, they've also had 6 different city managers, also the most in BC. And recently, a number of people from the area contacted CBC News, saying that things had gotten even worse. So how did it get to this point? Why can't Sayward hold on to its mayors or top staffers? Why do council meetings devolve into shouting matches?
Point of order. Point of order.
Please cite to the community charter what the point of order is, and then we can vote on it.
Point of order.
And why are things so bad that people are even debating whether the municipality should cease to exist? Like a lot of small town disputes, it depends who you ask.
Keyboard warriors and, they're gaining strength.
Bill Ives was appointed acting mayor in April 2020 after a different acting mayor quit. He lasted about 2 months before he was also forced out, quitting a few months later. And he paints a picture of a toxic culture of gossip and whispers that causes people to decide it's just not worth the hassle.
I found it frustrating because there were issues that were somehow discussed outside of council that were in camera that should have never been outside. And people take it, distort the information, and present it in online.
In camera is a legal term. That means it's closed to the public. These sorts of private meetings are allowed when a topic involves potential HR or legal issues. Current Mayor Mark Baker says that if the public is making allegations about an issue that council can't speak about, it creates a difficult governing dynamic.
It's extremely frustrating, but I'm never going to respond to a keyboard warrior, ever. You want answers, you come to me, I can tell you what I can.
Except because of those in-camera rules, Baker can't discuss the one thing dominating talk on the town Facebook page at the moment. It involves a family member of Councillor Scott Burritt, who has made untested allegations against the mayor. How the village is dealing with the allegations is being handled in camera, along with any questions about the potential response or costs. The tension between what is public and private drives a lot of the current dysfunction. Burritt has argued that the city manager no longer replies to his emails, and the mayor has kicked him out of multiple council meetings.
I've never seen such a toxic environment, and I'm trying to help make it better and work through that.
Neither Baker or Burritt can talk about the allegations because it involves in-camera conversations, but both of them believe that once the truth is out, their side will be exonerated, and the village will move forward.
I'm hoping everybody realizes that in the last year we have not got anywhere near the amount of work that we should have gotten done because of what's happening.
So that's the main cause of the current dysfunction. But when you add up all the dysfunction and all the turnover in the last 5 years, it puts Sayward in a tough place. The budget is behind. They don't have a modern official community plan. And something as simple as legalizing backyard chickens has been debated ad nauseum for 22 months.
Right, the motion was 6 chickens, no roosters, boilerplate bylaws from Campbell River, and let's just move forward with this.
But it didn't move forward that night because another staff member has recently left, and staff remaining simply haven't had the capacity to make it a priority. So to recap, Sayward is mired in dysfunction. They have more turnover than any other community in the province, and they can't move forward on basic tasks. And as for their finances, here is a chart. No municipality in BC has less cash and investments than Sayward. It isn't even close, which leads to the question, can Sayward solve its own problems, or should something drastic happen?
To have an intelligent discussion of the subject of the dissolution, of possible dissolution of the village of Sayward.
That's Alex Turner. Among all the shouting and arguing in circles at the council meeting, he put forward a simple but radical idea, that this entire thing should be shut down, that Sayward should stop existing as a municipality.
Well, there's an overhead to running a village like this. You have to have a CEO, a receptionist, a financial officer, the cost of the council. All of that is an overhead that if you get good governance from it, then it might be justified.
But if it's not justified? If a majority of residents asked for it, Sayward could become like any other small community in BC without a mayor and council, managed by the regional district. Locals would help elect an area director for the Strathcona Regional District, but basic services would be overseen by a much larger government, headquartered in Campbell River, with one voice from Sayward in a room full of politicians from across the north-central part of Vancouver Island.
And if we can make local government work better, then that's one good argument for maintaining the village as a political entity. You know, I'm just not entirely confident about that happening in the near future.
Turner isn't for or against the concept, but he wants a conversation so that residents can decide whether it's worthwhile. And while the mayor and Burritt don't agree on much, they're skeptical that people outside Sayward can fix Sayward's problems.
I don't think it's because of the bickering that may take place. I think they think that it's going to be a big cost savings because we don't have to pay a CAO, we don't have to pay a CAO. I'm not sure how that would all work out.
Communities decide to become municipalities in BC every few years, but the last one to go in the opposite direction, to say they wanted to disincorporate, was more than 100 years ago. Once people formed those basic bonds of local representation by population, it's hard to shake them.
It would be like Port Alberni managing Tofino. You don't get a taste of the culture, the local culture, the tight-knit community that Sayward is.
But it's a lesson for communities big and small in British Columbia of how things can go sour and why people fight for the idea of local government in the first place.
I think local government and being responsible locally is the best choice that represents the locals the best. Having outside administration and not localized really takes a lot away of what a close-knit community is. So yeah, it's worth fighting for.
Everyone wants a better future for Sayward. It's just everything else that gets in the way. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Sayward.
A BC search and rescue team asks for your help after someone stole their gear. What's missing and what they found after this. Thanks for joining our commercial-free live stream. Still with local news, the family of a Dawson Creek man is devastated and looking for answers after he died in jail in Mexico. Thomas Hempstock went to a resort by himself in Playa del Carmen to celebrate his birthday. Mexican authorities say he was arrested for aggressive behavior and said he had alcohol and cocaine in his system. A day after turning 32, a guard found him hanging in a detention cell by his shoelace. His sister says, though, those details don't add up.
People need to be aware of going to foreign countries and the way that things work. And I want the police department to be held liable. They failed him. They did not do their job. they did not keep him safe from himself, never mind from anyone else.
Hempstock died in December. Mexican authorities have not responded to repeated interview requests from CBC News. Anyone in Canada hoping for interest rate relief is going to have to wait a bit longer. As expected, the Bank of Canada is keeping its benchmark overnight rate at 5%. It's been there since last July, and as Nisha Patel tells us, it's unlikely to move for a few more months yet.
So that's our new total installment.
2 years of high interest rates have hit the Dumichel family hard.
We completely used up all our savings. We joined the food bank. We took the girls, we had 2 out of anything extracurricular.
The mortgage payments on their dream home have nearly doubled. They lost steady work and could be forced to sell.
It's just a combination of hardships right now. You know, like we can probably last for about 3 more months like this.
Many Canadians like them are playing the waiting game, desperate for lower interest rates.
The higher rates have weighed on consumption and investment, and you have seen things slow down.
The job market is cooler too, and inflation has tumbled from its peak. But the Bank of Canada says it's still too soon for rate cuts.
The assessment of the Governing Council is that we need to give higher interest rates more time to do their work.
Overall inflation in Canada is at 2.9%, and some of the core measures the central bank watches are even higher. So interest rates will stay where they are until officials see more progress towards the 2% target. Even then, rate cuts could be slow.
I think it's very safe to say we're not going to be lowering rates at the pace we raised them.
But those high rates are squeezing borrowers. In the latest quarter, missed mortgage payments climbed 52% compared to a year ago. Anyone facing mortgage renewal this year will see their bills jump sharply.
We've been putting extra away specifically for that reason, to be prepared for rates of 6 or 7% even.
I'm obviously hoping rates will go down this year. It's hard to tell at this point.
I think if they were to start decreasing, it would help a lot of people.
The Bank of Canada gave few clues about when it could change policy, though many economists predict the first interest rate cut could come in June. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Nanaimo Search and Rescue is asking for your help to find a big amount of its gear that someone stole. It happened early Tuesday morning around 2:30, and someone broke into the cargo trailers and stole 2 large cases, you can see somebody carrying them off there, filled with valuable equipment. They also stole a chainsaw and an automatic external defibrillator, or AED.
You know, it's disappointing. We're here trying to help the community, and you know, we fundraise a lot to acquire the equipment that we use, and just to have it taken away like that, it's very disappointing and frustrating.
The RCMP did eventually find the AED and an empty case used to transport some of the equipment, called a Pelican case. The rescuers say they're worried about how the loss will slow them down, as every second is critical in a rescue. They say they are grateful to people asking how they can donate. So to prevent future theft, they've already added wheel boots and changed how their trailers are parked so they cannot be opened without moving them. And there is a live look a bit earlier tonight from beautiful Long Beach Lodge in Tofino. Brace yourselves, though. More rain is on the way for the South Coast. Doris will have your BC-wide weather forecast next.
Basket making, it was never really taught on Lennox Island. It was a way of life, all right? My parents made baskets since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, I guess. And everything about the basket making was what you saw on a daily basis. Gipton, Saugage Bonal, Wedgie, Det, Migamagi, the unceded land of the Mi'kmaq. Now, my name is Gipton Jim Bernard, and I am from here, Mi'kmaqi. And as we sit here in my shop, making baskets, which is something I love to do, it's it's a tradition that's been passed down from me, from my father, and to him from his father. And it's been a tradition that's been going on for many years, and I'd like to keep it going on. In the older times they were used to nails to do it. Now, when I make baskets, I'm going back to the old way of making baskets before the nails and stuff like that were around, okay? So I wrapped them. This is my trademark, right? I always wrap the baskets and I never use nails. These are old baskets that come to me, all right? People put them online. People put them online because they want to get rid of them. I love old baskets. And the reason why is because I will then know how the baskets were made 75 to 100 years ago. And these baskets are old. We got baskets here at least 200 years old, okay? And all of the baskets are basically made the same. It's not an easy job. It gets easier with time, I should say, because when weaving baskets becomes a job, then I'm going to quit, because I only take this craft here as my pastime, and bringing the culture back to Mi'kmaq is very important. And it should be important to all people, okay? So the more I could do that, the more I like doing, all right? It's not really a job for me because, well, I guess it is, but one time somebody told me if you hate what you're doing, you're gonna grow old pretty fast. But if you like what you're doing and you can find somebody to pay you to do it, it's no longer a job, all right?
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Time for our BC-wide weather forecast with Darius Madavi. It's about to warm up before we get hit by another winter wallop?
That sounds about right. Yeah, it's pretty classic Vancouver. The winter conditions don't stick around for long, but they could be nasty while they are here before we see that warming up. So take a look here. These are our temperatures today, coming up a little bit tomorrow across the province, and we continue to see that blue fade away over the next few days. Now, we were expecting this warm up to come a while ago. We've been kept expecting it's kept getting pushed back, but it does seem to finally be coming. But with it, also a significant storm system is going to pass through. So we've got a few winter warnings or weather warnings to go through. Winter storm warning for inland parts of the north coast with anywhere from 20 to 40 centimeters of snow possible for some of those inland areas. For the west coast of the island and the North Island, we do have a special weather statement for strong winds and heavy rain coming from tomorrow night into Saturday. Now, at this point, that rain and that wind doesn't seem like it's going to meet the criteria for a wind warning or a rainfall warning, but that could very easily change in the hours and days ahead. So we're going to keep a close eye on that, as well as for the warning for Metro Vancouver and along the sea to sky, where we're not going to see any significant snowfall accumulations in Vancouver, but some snow is possible at higher elevations. And for the sea to sky to Whistler, significant snowfall is possible from tomorrow night into Saturday. Now, if we watch what's going to happen with this storm, we see it start to come in soon, and then it continues to roll down tomorrow. You see that first storm system, and here's the second one. We're going to watch that come in, hit the North Island tomorrow afternoon, and then continue to roll down, and then make its way to us here in Vancouver and for the South Island by tomorrow night. Now, that is going to continue walloping us for quite a few days, and at times also breaking into parts of the interior. So really, this is going to be a across BC event. But for now, pretty calm. We have one more day of calm before that arrives. So tomorrow, plenty of sun in the interior, a little bit wet in parts of the coast, but not looking too bad. And freezing levels should be low enough that it will fall as snow on the mountains and not rain, even as that system continues to pass through, which is good news. But it's another very Vancouver forecast ahead, Dan.
Consistently March. Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Dan.
And that is your late news for Wednesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news at any hour, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Have a good night.